everyone, welcome to Logan Smosh Pig. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. You're just in time for a new episode of Rock and Read. Today, you're going to hear chapter 38 of It's So Easy and Otherwise by Duff McKagan. Here we go. When I got down to LA in June 1994, I was 5 weeks sober. Before even going up to my house, I stopped at the Bike Shack, a cycle shop in Studio City. One of the first things I noticed in the shop was a sign-up sheet for a long-distance cross-country mountain bike race in Big Bear, California. The race would take place in 7 weeks. There was a beginner's category. I had never entered a race or done any sort of individual sport before. I found the thought of it a bit daunting and alien, but what the? I was on my bike all the time, and every day. I might as well train for an event. I figured someone at the bike shop could give me some tips. Besides, if I entered this race, it would give me a concrete reason to stay sober until a certain date, a goal. I registered for the race. I had never felt so alone, yet now I also felt strangely invigorated. Next, I picked out a new mountain bike. Though I had been using an old no-name steel bike, I decided to splurge on what I thought was a pretty nice bike, a Diamondback. After all, this was my thing now, and I wanted a good bike. I knew I had a lot to deal with. For one thing, I had to cut it off with my wife Linda. She was not understanding about the situation. How could I have expected her to be? Our relationship was based on getting up together. Aside from my dog, I was very much alone in Los Angeles, as I felt it prudent to throw out my black address book, filled to the brim with names and phone numbers of people I partied with, and who would probably like to keep on partying. No one likes to drink or drug alone. A fence encircled my house, and I kept the front gate shut. I didn't drive Laurel Canyon anymore. I took different roads, so I didn't have to pass my dealer's house and all my party buddies' places. People tried to come around sometimes, people from the past, but word got around that I wasn't going back to that world. For the most part, it turned out, addicts were pretty respectful. Oh, he's gotten out of the game. I had no program, no Alcoholics Anonymous, no community around me. I had Eddie, who was sober, but he was in Seattle. Izzy was sober too, but I'm sure he still had doubts. Is Duff really sober? Ed and I continued to talk almost daily on the phone. He gave me tips on things to eat and on books to read, things to feed my mind. He flew down and stayed with me as I went through the initial divorce papers and struggled with the realization that I was a 2-time loser in the marriage department. He helped me to understand that my idealized vision of love could never have been attained in the upstate I had just come out of. With the Big Bear bike race on the horizon, I spent a chunk of every day riding hard on the steep hills near my house. On one of my first rides, I went through Fryman Park, intending to cut through it to familiar trails in Willacre Park, farther down the slope. But I ran across a trailhead in Fryman Park I had never noticed, and took it. As I rode up one section, something caught my eye in a gulch next to the trail. What the is that? I stopped the bike and peered over the edge for a better look. Below sat a grotesquely misshapen heap of metal, the wreck of an old car. It turned out this was the point directly below Dead Man's Curve. I had found my trail of choice. Mornings, I was still panic-ridden. I felt myself gasping for air after what seemed like an eternity, dunked underneath a thick green film of pond muck. I was sober, but thirsty. My mind had almost atrophied from lack of stimulation. Now that my life had taken a turn for the better, I felt that I needed to read. I wanted to experience the things I had missed out on, all of the books high schoolers were required to read. It's not as if I was nostalgic for the days of high school, but I was curious. F. Scott Fitzgerald? Shakespeare? Melville? Where do I start? Fiction? Non-fiction? Someone gave me the Ken Burns Civil War documentary on VHS. I would go to my bedroom early each night around 9 and pop in one of those videotapes. I was enthralled. I could not get enough. So I started to read books about the war. Then other wars. I went from the Civil War to the First World War to the Second, back to the Revolution, forward to Vietnam. When I happened upon a book by Ernest Hemingway set during the Spanish Civil War, it dawned on me that I had yet to delve into my initial plan to plow through some of that required reading. For me, that book, For Whom the Bell Tolls, was the one that suddenly unlocked the world of literature. Hemingway's descriptions blew me away. They were sparse but beautiful. When he wrote of hunger or pain, I felt sudden pangs of soreness and dread. And when one of his characters talked about alcohol addiction, I cringed. Of all men, the drunkard is the foulest. The thief, when he is not stealing, is like another. The extortioner does not practice in the home. The murderer, when he is at home, can wash his hands. But the drunkard stinks and vomits in his own bed and dissolves his organs in alcohol. I went straight from there into The Sun Also Rises, A Farewell to Arms, Green Hills of Africa, and The Old Man and the Sea. Hemingway's writing woke me to the rhythms that could make a phrase or paragraph dance or saunter. I read his poems. I read his short stories. I plowed through 2 huge Hemingway biographies, even though one was unreadable. In my new and lonely world of desert island sobriety, I was at last connecting with something. If I was not yet finding my place in the world, I was at least finding places and ideas and people I could relate to, despise, or aspire to in these great books. As I moved on to other writers, working my way through literary classics alongside my steady stream of nonfiction, the authors also gave me confidence to use my own voice when speaking and to use intelligent words, as opposed to a raised voice that had really only masked fear of how to deal with uncomfortable or incomprehensible situations. The space between the covers of these books became my place of solitude. Reading continues to represent a meditative haven for me to this day. At the end of every day, whether on tour or at home with my family, I always take time alone at night to read. It has become a time to arm myself for trials to come. And with Guns N' Roses in 1994, there were definitely trials to come, and soon. Well, that wraps up Chapter 38. Let me know what you thought of this chapter in the comments below. That does it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.